We are so lucky. This is Bridget Cooper. She is an amazing individual who's recently done a TED Talk. And I asked her if she would come in. We're taping her because she's going to tell you the story of her TED Talk, which is not what you would think. She's not going to actually do her TED Talk, but talk about the circumstances around the TED Talk. This is an opportunity for you to ask somebody who walked the walk what they did, okay? So without further ado, Dr. Bridget Cooper.
Thank you. So I love it when I have a state trooper in the room, so I'm going to be leaving long before you do. Okay, just so we're super clear about that.
Good.
Yeah.
I want to get home.
Yeah, I know, exactly. As do I. Yeah, with the same amount of money in my bank account that I got here with. I feel like it's a very good mix.
I see you're a comedian too.
Yeah, here you go. So, I had it on my bucket list to do a TED Talk. I speak for a living. I do a lot of corporate consulting and conference speeches and training work. And so I love being in front of an audience. I love giving a message. And I had written my autobiography last year, and so many of my friends, colleagues, and readers said, "You've got to do a TED Talk. 2017 is the year you have to get a TED Talk." So I applied to a few and was recommended to a few, and I got the one I wanted, which was in Newport, Rhode Island, because who doesn't love Newport, Rhode Island, right? So I thought, hey, this is a perfect excuse for me to say, sorry kids, got to go to Newport and practice. I'll be gone all day and evening, and no, kidding. But it was a great opportunity for me to be able to spend some time in Newport and meet some local people. So anyway, I got invited on December 30th of 2017, and the TEDx Newport was taking place on March 10th, Saturday, March 10th. So one of the ways that Sandi and I met, besides today, was I had asked people, I said, look, I have to practice this speech because, as you know, how long does a TED Talk, what's the maximum for a TED Talk, do you know? 18 minutes. I don't know why 18. I don't know if it's a lucky number of somebody who created this. Not really sure, but it's 18 minutes. So 18 minutes of memorized speech. Because a lot of TEDx's, they don't have teleprompters. Some do, but a lot of them don't have teleprompters. And when I was looking at TED Talks, I thought, the whole reason for me to do a TED Talk is to get the video. Because I can stand in front of an audience any day of the week and spout off my ideas. I get paid to do that. But having a TED Talk, for me, meant the video. So in order for the video to look refined, I didn't want to have cue cards, in my hand. I'd only seen a few in all the hundreds of TED Talks that I'd watched ever holding anything. And I thought, I don't want that to be me. So I really need to practice this. So Sandi had been at one of my public performances because one of the things I find about social media, especially my network, is as soon as I tell people I need something, my page gets flooded with offers and advice and support. I'm really fortunate that way. So I put out a few weeks before the TED Talk, about maybe 5 weeks before, I said, I need to practice this all the time because my dog has heard enough of it and honestly could probably give it herself, but I need to actually do this in front of people. So if you want me to come to your house, your place of business, whatever, I need places to practice this. So people started making offers. I started getting people renting out libraries and offering to have me at their corporate spaces, in their homes, for a group of women over wine and cheese. I had all sorts of opportunities to practice. And one of them was at Goodwin College. That's where Sandi and I met. So I practiced this. I practiced this to the point where I was standing in my living room at one point and I was practicing again to my dogs. And one of my dogs started barking, and it was annoying me because I was timing myself and recording, making sure that I was running on time. And I, in the middle of my speech, grabbed her by the collar, kept talking, walked over, put her in her crate, locked it up, was still talking, walked back to the place where I had been with my timer, and kept going. Like, I knew this speech. I recorded it. I would listen to myself giving it, which is kind of creepy. As I went to sleep at night, as I woke up in the morning, knew this speech. So now, do you want to know the TEDx story? Okay, so they put me on last, and the reason that they put me on last for the day, so TEDx events are curated. So they are looked at for what the content is, for what the flow is going to look like, who they should group in certain spaces, who's going to go before a break, after a break, things like that, because they really want the most impact, not only of the talk itself that will be recorded and watched later, but for the attendees at the event. So this was held at the Jane Pickens in Newport. Has anyone ever been to the Jane Pickens in Newport? It's the antique theater of Newport. It is the historic space where they have been running movies and doing flapper dancers and all of this since the 1920s. And at the Jane Pickens, you can hold about 400 people. So they sold a little over 300 tickets, and then the rest of the tickets were used for people like me and our few guests and some of the volunteers. Anyway, so it was also being live cast around the world, really, because it was held off of their website. So I had friends in Switzerland, in Italy, and across the country watching this event. And the event goes from 11 to 5, and again with a couple of breaks, and I was the last speaker on. So they were running the event a little bit late, so I went on at about 5 o'clock. And my talk is about my memoir. So my talk is about how you rise up through trauma. And how I began the speech was, I had to have a little hook, because when one of the pieces of advice for doing a TED Talk is in the first 5, 10, 15 seconds, you have to get people to want to watch you, right? I knew I could get them entertained later on, but I had to get them in that first few seconds. So I crafted probably about 10 or 12 different intros over the course of my practicing. I kept everything else the same. I kept changing that intro, wanting to make sure that I had something that would hook people in. So I said, I loved people who had superpowers. I was always fascinated with superpowers, and that I had one, and I was going to share it with the audience watching. I was going to teach them how to have their own superpower, because my superpower was walking through fire. Even did an impression of Wonder Woman walking through that barren wasteland of a battlefield, fending off her bullets and fires popping up around her. Anyway, so I got to what was the third page of my speech, because I had 10 pages of speech outlined. I was memorizing each one of the paragraphs and transitions. And I got to the third page, and I got midway through a sentence, and I stopped. I not only stopped, I screeched to a halt, and I had not one word to share. Not one. Not one anywhere in the speech, not one the next paragraph, not one the next sentence. I had absolutely nothing to share. So I stood there on that stage. Again, 400 people watching just in that room. And additionally, many more people watching from around the country and around the world, across the country and around the world. And I thought, okay, Bridget, get it together, right? You're not nervous. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't freaking out. I was the calmest I can ever remember being. And I stood there and I thought, I know the words are in here somewhere. I just have to find them. So I went on like a Dora the Explorer adventure, right? I was like, she would know. Map. Where's map, right? Where is map when you need it? I'm going to find these words, because I know for this brain that never stops going and this mouth that never stops flapping, I have got to have some words to share with these fine people. So I stood there and I thought, I teach for a living presence and having focus and being able to be in the moment. Come on, I got this. All of this is happening, as you said. I was having an Ally McBeal moment. Maybe I'm dating myself. Yes, absolutely an Ally McBeal moment. So I'm standing there and I'm thinking, okay, you're calm, but you apparently are not calm enough to let this information flow. So you can see on the tape, I went like this. I was like, okay. I was in prayer mode, like, let the words come to me. You know English. You have to have some words to be able to share here. And I just sat there and I thought, And then I opened my eyes and I looked around and I thought, I still have nothing to share with them. And again, I'm completely, you can laugh, it was hilarious. I'm completely calm, like stoically calm, like freakishly calm. And I'm standing there and I think to myself, I'm not doing these people any good right now. Now, I want you to imagine, so I'm just going to do this for a moment, okay? That was 4 seconds that I just counted. How uncomfortable were you? Pretty uncomfortable? And you kind of saw it coming? I stood there in silence for 24 seconds. Silence. Nothing. Not one word coming out of my mouth. 24 seconds. And then I looked at the audience after, again, I had dug as deeply as I could dig with, and MAP was not helping me at all. Thanks so much for all that. Swiper was like, I looked at the audience and I said, give me a minute. And I walked off the stage like I was in my house and I'd forgotten my coffee in the other room and needed to go get it, right? So I walked off stage. Now imagine the panic that is happening. I am the closing act, right? The content of my speech was so powerful and so emotional that they had to put it last. And there they are, their showcase ending act is walking off the stage after 3 minutes and at that point, almost 4 minutes, right? So I walk off stage and I get back and the organizer is sitting there manning or womaning the slides, right? And she's like looking at them and she looks up at me and she says, are you okay? And I said, I'm fine. I need my speech. And I yelled to the back room like, I don't know, Barbra Streisand only eating green M&Ms or something, like having some diva moment. I'm like, speech, pink, there, right? Because I have the entire room is like full of all the other speakers, all the volunteers just waiting, like, the hell is going on with her right now, right? So I snap and my speech appears from somewhere over in the corner and they hand it to me. And as this is happening, the poor MC is like, I gotta go cover for this, right? You're going back out, right? I'm like, yes. So he walks back on stage and he says, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, we're having some technical difficulties. She'll be right back. What he didn't say was the technical difficulties were in here, right? Not anything to do with the actual technology. He would have been able to handle that. Anyway, so I get to the door. I've looked at my speech like that sense. I go, oh, that's what words look like. Oh, that's how English works. I forgot there for a moment how that all happened. So I saw the sentence again and I was like, oh my God, why could I not find this? So I looked at the organizer and she said, do you want to start from the top? And I said, yes, because I'm an agreeable person. And then I went, no, that is not what I want. And she was like, where do you want to start? And I said, where I left off, but at the top. So she said, which slide? And I pointed like I was grunting like a caveman. I was like, that. She's like, okay, you set? I'm like, I'm good. I walked back on, I think pushing past the MC who had gone out to cover for me. And I walk back out and now the crowd erupts in applause. I ain't got time for this, right? Okay. I had a job to do that I was miserably failing at some level, and I needed to get this ship back, right? So I walk out and I get to my little red, by the way, the red dot that you see at some TED events is ginormous. The one that they actually have at this one is a 4-foot square. So it is like, I mean, all you can basically do is like this, right? And maybe one of those 90s dance moves like this, but that's about all. You got your jazz square and that's about all you've got, right? So I walk back out to the square and they're applauding and I go, like I honestly like shushed them because I'm like, I know. First, because I had a job to do. And second, because this is how clear and calm I was. I was thinking to myself, when they splice these two tapes together and remove Trevor from walking out, right? And like remove me from walking out and back on, because who doesn't want two TED Talks in one day? I thought they need to have me in the same position that I was in when I started this part. So I went to the space and I'm like, counted 1, 2, went back in. Nailed it, apparently. Got a standing ovation. And then I walked off the stage and I thought, wow, that's not at all what I had imagined a TED Talk was going to be like at all. Like in all of my things. And I walked over to a friend of mine. I'm like, get these fake eyelashes off, because they put me in stage makeup. I'm like, these are making me crazy. Take these off. They were like, that's what you're thinking of right now? I'm like, yes, get these things off of me. Anyway, so I went home that night and I got up first thing in the morning. And I went on to the livestream.com website, which is where they were holding the video still. I thought livestream, it's over, right? No, they kept playing it. So I went on first thing in the morning. I thought, you know what? I got to face this demon right now. I got to see what this looked like. I got to know what that count was, because I, at that point, had no idea how long any of this had taken. And so I sat there and I counted and I went, yep, 24 seconds. Oh, that must have been painful to watch. And then I counted I think it was 48 seconds I was off stage. And I then watched the whole thing and I thought, that's really interesting. All the feedback that I got the night before seemed legit. And the feedback was that you walked out there and you said that your superpower was walking through fire. And that's what you did. In front of everyone, I walked through the flames, and I could not and would not have planned that, trust me. But I did, and it was powerful. And so I posted, I thought, you know what? When you've got, shame grows in the darkness, right? And I thought, I don't feel shame about this because I didn't feel any ownership over the forgetting. Because I had done everything I was supposed to do in preparation. I had done everything I could do when I was in the moment. That taking away of that speech was not mine. I was very clear at that moment that there was some higher purpose as to why I had to forget, so that I could stand in that in the way that I did and serve people that way. Even though I had my plan of how I was going to serve people, somebody came in and took me off that track and made me serve in a whole different way. And so I watched it, and I posted on Instagram, on Facebook, and on LinkedIn, and I said, okay, people, so I brag on being all authentic and living in your truth and your power. Here's my ugly, messy truth, right? This is what happened to me last night. And I posted about it. Got so many shares and likes and comments. And people have asked me since then, so which version are they putting up on TEDx or on the TED.com website? And I said, surprisingly, I don't care. Part of me actually wants them to just remove the MC from coming out and saying technical difficulties and just have that such uncomfortable moment given to people for them to wrestle with, because it was so bloody uncomfortable. It really was. I had friends, I was telling this story earlier, that I had friends. One of my best friends lives in Maryland. We've been friends for like 21 years. I've known her husband all that time. And they were watching with their almost 18-year-old daughter. And so my friend is seeing this happening, and she's like, oh, she's lost it. She's not coming back from this, right? Her husband's like, no, it's technical difficulties. Her daughter patting her on the back. She's got this, Mom. She's got this. Like 3 completely different experiences of the same moment, right? And then a girlfriend of mine, she had intended to come, and her daughter got the flu the night before. A flu was killing a lot of people from being able to enjoy this live. So she's watching it on TV, and she's got her 11-year-old son with her, who I've never met, by the way. Like, I don't know her kids. We know each other professionally. And he grabs her cell phone, like I had my phone on me at the time, right? So he grabs her cell phone, apparently, and I get off stage, and I find he typed to me right when I walked off stage, "Get back out there." 11-year-old man-child say what? So then, and then he says, "That was savage." And I was like, I just got told I was savage by an 11-year-old boy. It doesn't get much better than that. So, and then there were some people who were clear, like even in the audience at the time, who could see what I thought was clear that it was not technical difficulties. They said, I thought you planned that. I thought you were doing that to punctuate what you had just got finished saying, which was such a powerful thing. Like when I made the statement that I had made right before I flubbed up in that next sentence, or 2 sentences later, I heard the audience groan. Like you heard, oh, right? The whole place went. So they thought I did that to take space or to like punctuate that moment. I was like, I would not have walked off a TED stage. I mean, maybe I would have stepped off the dot because I was feeling really like provocative, but like, no, I would not have done that. So, so that was the story of my TED Talk. And so I guess my moral is that you prepare for the moment as best you can, and then know that the moment is going to be what the moment is. And the only thing that saved me from doing anything really destructive with what was happening right there was that I did not go to the past and think, what could I have done? Like thought about regrets or what was happening in my story or any of the things that could have like erupted and really drawn me in. And I didn't think about the future other than that camera moment. Like I was practical, like what in this moment can I control? Oh, I can control the camera. I can control what they're gonna grab from this. If I had gone to the future further than that, I would have started thinking about what people were gonna think, what they were gonna say, how they might perceive me. Would I be seen as a failure? Would I be able to talk again in public? Had this ruined me forever, right? I would have gone into this crazy mind, right? But I stayed right there because all of the power that I had was right there. And if I hadn't trained in that, I wouldn't have been able to get that moment back. If that makes any sense. And so there was the walking through fire piece, there was the I'm savage. And there was the staying in that moment instead of trying to correct something else that was somewhere where I didn't have any power. So that is my first hit. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
All right, while Bridget's here, does anybody have any
I'm
questions
just gonna grab my water.
about TED Talks or about anything?
Yes,
How did you go about writing it?
that's a great question. So writing it. So whenever I write a speech, because I, again, speak for a living, I'm looking at what is, if they take nothing from all the details I give them, because 18 minutes is a long time to talk when you think about it. I want them to leave with some message. What do I want them to leave with? So like I just did, I wanted you to leave with the fact that all of your power is in the present, right? That was the underlying message, right? And that we can all walk through fire and come out the other side. Those were my messages. So finding what is the thing at the end of all of it that I want to make sure that I say. And then I wanted to say it in a number of different ways. And I wanted to tell a story because in TED Talks, you connect through story. So my talk, I knew I had I had a challenge because I was giving some incredibly raw, awful imagery in my story because I was talking about a trauma story. I was talking about infant child abuse, sexual abuse. I was talking about some really awful things that had been part of my history. And so I had to tell the story in a craftful way that didn't violate people, right? But still told the story. So I had that one story kind of blending through. And then the other story I had was the walking through fire was walking through other people's fire and not being burned by them, was coming up with a different relationship to pain by using forgiveness to rid yourself of the things that have been handed to you that you never would have taken on had you had choice. And so I had to give my Dr. B lesson with my Bridget experience. So I ended up writing them and doing this, like almost like coming up over the wave, under the wave, over the wave, under the wave. So I could see that in each page I was touching each one of those things, and when working as much symbolism and as much imagery as possible. Whenever you tell a story, as many senses as you can hit, you pull people into the story, and then they're with you and they want to hear the end of it. So I knew once I hooked them, because the hook is huge, I had to leave them with the thing that I wanted them to understand and to hear. I wanted to leave them wanting to cheer, which they did. But to get them there, I had to be gentle in the story, and leave in only as much as I had to give them the story, and not so much that I was just horrifying them. I had to have it have purpose, if that makes sense. So really, I think it depends on the speech, but I think the important things to remember are imagery, story. It makes it easier to remember when you think about it as a story, because you know your stories, right? You could stand up here and tell me the story about last Christmas. You could tell me the story about your road trip adventure. You could tell those stories because you know. Mine was, like I said, I made it more difficult because I wasn't just telling a story. I was trying to teach a lesson at the same time. So that blending made things kind of go up and down over that. So I went through a lot of revisions. I had a lot of people. I practiced it a lot, and when I heard myself say it, I'd be like, I catch on that, or that doesn't really flow, or that doesn't feel natural to me. That's not how I speak. That's how I write, and that's different. I sent it to a few people who I trusted with my words to look at it and say, is it clear? Does it sound right? Does it sound like me? So, does that help?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, I'm trying to gear mine towards a personal issue as well, so I wanted to be able to tell my story through that. Do you recommend like fully writing it out or doing an outline? Because
it depends. Like, so
it's similar to like a traumatic, but it's more mental illness.
Right.
So like I know that I can explain things like that, but do you recommend like fully? Like,
so I wrote
word
it.
to word?
So I wrote it out word for word because of the 18-minute time limit. And because I knew that when I had originally had it, before I started slashing sentences and ripping things out of it, it was running, if I were speaking slowly and deliberately and waiting and allowing people to catch up and having those poignant pauses, it was running at like 17 and a quarter, 17 and a half. So I had no room for error. And the way I talk, I could talk for 3.5 hours. I have no idea what time it is now. So I had to be narrow. So the only advice that I can give you, because I speak for a living now, and I run off script. I almost never have script now when I speak. Is I start with the end in mind. I have those 3 things I want them to leave with, right? And so I have them in my brain of, okay, so I'm going to start with this. I'm going to go to this. I'm going to end with this. That's how I'll know where I am, and that's how I'll know I'm remembering everything, right? And then you can go with it. And if you time yourself going through those 3 things, you'll notice where you start to talk more or not talk enough, and you'll just maybe add a couple things of, okay, these 3 things, but this one has those 2, this one has those 3, this one has those 2. All right, now I can see it. So mine had that, like I outlined mine and had like a word on each page, like, oh, this is Wonder Woman page. This is trauma scary page. This is, pain page. This is, seeing the light page. You know what I mean? So that I could kind of at least orient myself as I went through it, that I covered everything. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But we know our own stories, but I was very, because I wrote the story. So I was also trying to tell it without, when you see it on YouTube, you'll see what I mean. I said it in a very craftful way that you had to really think about, did she just say that? Do you know what I mean? Versus just saying, like, telling the fact. Yeah. Any? Come on, I'm right here. Ask me anything. Yeah.
Because you talked about such a personal
Yes.
topic, how did you keep your own emotions in check? Take away from the audience to have their own reaction?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's an adage. I don't know who originated it. I know Glennon Doyle has used it, which is you don't teach from the wound. You teach from the scar. So I don't have any emotions. My emotions around what I was speaking about were out of fear of hurting other people with it. It wasn't about mine, which is why I think when I heard them moan, I was like, oh no, empath, no, walls go up, right? Like shields deflect, you know what I mean? Like I couldn't, because I heard it, I was like, oh, I hurt them. And so even when you saw me give it, when I gave it at Goodwin, I had just started doing it without notes, and I couldn't look them in the eye. I said, I'm not gonna look at you, I'm looking above you. Because if I look in your eye and I see your reaction, I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna wanna comfort you, and I can't do that. So that was the biggest thing for me. It wasn't my emotions, it was me getting too caught up in their emotions. And so what I imagined was, people said to me, who are you speaking to? And I said, I'm speaking to the USA gymnastics team. That's who I'm speaking to. And it was interesting because a dad reached out to me who was in the audience with his wife and daughter, and his daughter had been assaulted when she was a swimmer by her coach. And she was watching this, and he said, like, oh my God, that was life-changing what you said. So I had to try to get myself to imagine how much they needed to hear what I had to say instead of how painful it was going to be to listen, if that makes sense. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Now, if you're doing it on a personal matter, do you recommend having that second piece that you're like teaching a lesson from your story?
It depends on why you're telling the story. Yeah, I mean, I think the story, but you like fairy, fables, right? They always have a lesson in them, right? Like, Goldilocks and the Three Bears, what's that about? Hansel and Gretel, what's that about, right? When you're telling a story, there's always something you're trying to communicate about the strength of people, or, being aware, or don't trust everyone, or whatever. Like, whatever your nugget is, like, what do you want me to learn from that? I think you can speak that through the story. It doesn't necessarily have to be two different pieces like mine were, but mine was a very, it was a different way of looking at forgiveness, because even when I told people, did you see how I waited so long to tell you that I said the word forgiveness? Because when I pitched my idea and I pitched the original title and I used the word forgiveness, every single person I said it in front of went, I'm not watching that. Because so many of us have such a visceral, negative association with the word forgiveness. I had to sell forgiveness through my story. So I had to do this very artful crafting thing, because if I led with that, people were gonna be like, I don't even know what she's saying anymore, right? So that mine was, in that way, I guess it was more complex, because I was coming in the back door, sneaking up on them. With the big F word, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We are
Yeah.
so grateful.
Thank you.